biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Good evening. With GB News, our top story. The MP Crispin Blunt has been arrested on suspicion of rape and the possession of controlled substances. The member for Reigate identified himself on social media this afternoon as the Surrey man police had detained in Hawley yesterday. Well, Surrey police have confirmed that a man was released on conditional police bail pending their further inquiries. Mr Blunt has already been removed from the Conservative Party and asked to stay away from Parliament. The former minister said he will cooperate fully with the police investigation and is confident he won't be charged. In international news today, the UK's border force is currently in Egypt, with the Prime Minister confirming officers have pre-positioned themselves to help British nationals escape Gaza when the border reopens. Cabinet ministers held an emergency Cobra meeting this morning to address the escalating crisis in the Middle East. The government's pushing for a pause in fighting, rejecting calls for a full ceasefire to facilitate aid reaching Palestinians. And that comes as leaders at an EU summit in Brussels today agreed to call for humanitarian corridors to get urgently needed aid into Gaza. And the UN says the world is failing to meet the basic human rights of people in Gaza. Humanitarian Chief Martin Griffiths is warning that aid isn't getting into the Gaza Strip quickly enough and that Israel's bombardment is getting worse. UN aid agencies have begun to reduce their operations in the area because they say they've almost run out of fuel. In response, Israel refuses to let fuel supplies in because they say Hamas could use it for military purposes. And Israel insists it's only targeting the terrorist group in Gaza. Well, in other news today, the Prime Minister warned that artificial intelligence could threaten humanity with extinction on a similar scale to global pandemics or even nuclear war. His comments come after touring a London eye hospital which uses AI to diagnose sight problems. Rishi Sunak says humanity could lose control of AI and terrorist groups could use it to spread fear and destruction. He's also announced the formation of the world's first AI Safety Institute in the UK to explore the risks and share its data with the world. And lastly, remembrance poppies will be plastic-free this year and recyclable in the first redesign of the iconic emblem in a generation. It's part of a move by the Royal British Legion to reduce the production of single-use plastics. From today, volunteers and supermarkets will be selling the historic symbol worn annually to honour the service and sacrifice of Britain's armed forces in conflicts over the decades. Each poppy sold raises money to support surviving veterans as well as serving personnel and is traditionally worn from the last Friday in October, which is tomorrow. I have mine on a little early. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Josh Howie, and joining me tonight to explore Friday's newspapers, where I'm sure I won't mention Israel at all, are two fantastic panellists, the future Mr. and Mrs. Cressida Wetton. It's very progressive of you.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
I don't know. I just think you make a wonderful couple.
Hasn't even cut to me, so she's so feminist, I'm not even allowed in the picture.
I just think it's very progressive of you taking, like, Nick Wetton.
Yeah, I'm a feminist, I've said.
Mike, and he goes by Mick. That's very...
Is that what it is? Mick
odd.
and Nick together. Anyway.
Let's move on.
How are you both? You guys having a good
I
day?
was fine until about 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry, don't panic you.
I'm very well, because my podcast just hit 1 million downloads, Josh. Did you know?
You mentioned it.
It's called The Weekly Skeptic, but yeah.
Congratulations, that is a huge number. Genuinely, you worked really hard on it. I think that's fantastic.
I am a huge fan of Toby Young.
Why am I getting dissed so much already? They're jealous, guys. People at home know. Ugly, ugly jealousy.
Right, let's have a quick gander at Friday's front pages. The Daily Mail. Senior Tory MP arrested over rape and drugs. Telegraph, Putin welcomes Hamas to Moscow. Guardian, Israel stages raid into Gaza as new phase of war begins. The Times, 200 Britons trapped in Gaza plead for help. Express, dementia cases to rise, but new drug offers hope. And finally, the Daily Star, grumpy devils and hell to live with. And those were your front pages. Let's kick off with the Telegraph, Cressida.
Putin welcomes Hamas to Moscow. So, wow, he's forming an axis of terror as he welcomes them.
Does he call it the axis of terror?
I don't know. The Telegraph do. It's in quote marks, but it doesn't... I
wouldn't
don't
put it
know.
past Putin.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's clearly very pleased with himself. In a move condemned by Israel, obviously, as an obscene step that gives support to terrorism, Russian officials met with the terror group. I wonder how the people who have been pulling down the posters, the people who are very... I mean, I appreciate Hamas is separate from Palestine, but I wonder how people feel about this.
No, they're not that separate.
It's, well...
There's some connection there.
Well,
Anyway.
it just... I mean, this is obviously raising concern in the West.
No, I hear you. Obviously, people on the left who support the Palestinian cause. I support the Palestinian cause for their own country. But as soon as they stop, trying to kill all the Jews. But anyway, but the point...
Hamas stopped...
sorry, Hamas, yes, no, because no other Palestinians would do that. But the point is that, yes, they are now allying themselves with Iran, with Russia. Why has Russia done this, Nick?
Well, I don't know, but it's worrying, isn't it? Because we had all that peace under Trump, and I hate to say it. I hate to say it.
I love how everybody just uses this to bring in their own stuff.
Yeah. I hate to say it because, I'm not partisan, but... you do look at this. Trump was trying to apparently form some sort of trade deal with Russia and ease relations with them. But then you had that Democrat hoax, the Russia hoax, so he couldn't then do it. He had to stop because they were claiming, oh, Trump's in league with Putin, Russian disinformation, all this kind of stuff. So it's tragic. And we now have Biden, we have 2 wars, and we have a new axis of evil back to the George W. Bush times. So it's very, very worrying. And if that wasn't bad enough, Duran won't do Glastonbury is the other big front page story.
Well, and I think probably Putin had his hand in that as well.
Yes.
But before we move on, I mean, this is a big deal. The fact, the language even that Putin's using with Hamas, it's sort of justified praising their active role, and that is essentially a covering up for raping and torturing children. But this for Israel has got to be a massive blow because Israel has had to, just because I know somewhat about the region as well, but because of Russia's involvement in Syria, Israel has had to kind of appease Russia somewhat when it came to Ukraine. A lot of people were criticising Israel because they weren't coming all out against Ukraine or for Ukraine. And now this is the way that Russia's essentially sort of repaid them. But then, of course, that's what you're going to deal with megalomaniac.
As if you can just swap. It's like kids in the playground. We're friends now, we're not. What?
You're talking about behind the scenes.
You're saying Putin isn't the stand-up guy we all thought, is what I'm getting.
I'm shocked, exactly. Right, let us go next to the Times, Nick.
So the Times have 200 Britons trapped in Gaza plead for help. And the UK Border Force agents have been sent to Egypt to evacuate British citizens from Gaza. Rishi Sunak has said they're pre-positioned there and they're waiting for a pause, which is not the same as a ceasefire, but it's a pause to enable this kind of humanitarian help and to enable the Brits to get out of there. So this is what we want.
Yeah, and there's a picture on the front there of a child with very clean arms and legs. Now, this is obviously we have to get British citizens back. I believe Humza Yousaf's mother-in-law is one of those people, British citizen who lives in Gaza. It's going to be hard, of course, to extricate them with that border closed because I believe, Cresta, Egypt doesn't want to open it. People are saying, why, and then Egypt has said, well, you take them all if you want them. But they obviously are not eager to accept the Gazan population into their country because partly they're afraid of some of those number being Hamas.
Right. Yeah.
That wasn't really a question, was it?
No. But you're right. No one wants to take them. We're supposed to take. People suggest we should take them in Britain, but Egypt, Jordan won't take them, but we're supposed to take them. So it's kind of mad.
But obviously they do want them back. But Cresta, there's a couple of more stories. I know we haven't had that much time because the papers just came in. You didn't want to cover. There's something about foie gras, but does that make you feel sick?
I especially like doing stories I haven't read, and also my mum's watching, and she hates the idea of foie gras.
Just the idea of it, just the pretentious pronunciation of it. Foie gras.
No, I mean, I just think in this day and age, come on, is it really necessary? Why are we still?
Because it's delicious.
Oh goodness me! I mean, we're in the age of luxury beliefs. Do we still have to engage in this to feel luxurious? I mean, you can get everything you need from Lidl. Just have some salmon inside. I don't know. It's not for me.
And the story is I just wanted to get clear for the viewer. The story is halt imports of inhumane foie gras say 9 in 10. So you're with 9 in 10 cowards who.
But also, is there such a thing as humane foie gras? Like you're basically
Josh?
Forcing these ducks to overeat.
I'm going to make the case for foie gras. I'd like to. Unfortunately, I don't have enough knowledge. I read there was a long article about why foie gras actually is okay from someone who is involved in making it, but it was too long and boring, and I didn't read it. But there is a humane case for it if you're prepared to scour the internet. But I got bored because I'm never going to eat it anyway.
No, really fair enough. Well, and then finally, there is actually a pretty serious story which is going to impact all of us. We have about dementia cases to double by 2040, and this is double the rate that they also thought it was already going to happen. Wow. This is going to have the most sort of direct impact on all of our lives in the UK, right, Cresta?
Well, it is, but apparently, according to the drugs companies mentioned in this article, this is me going a bit you-know-who, they're telling us...
Tragically, I do know who you mean. I hate that the show has reached that stage.
Look, obviously, women are horrible. No, the point is that they're telling us on the one hand, it's going to be really bad, and they're also saying, but we've got a drug for that. So,
I see. Okay.
Apparently that's going to make it not as bad.
But it is lifestyle choices. It seems like obesity seems to be one of the major factors to do with this.
Getting old as well, the choice to get old. No, they're going to say diet. They're going to demonise meat. We can all see it coming.
I know, but the cost of the NHS, the cost of social services, this is going to be a huge chunk of our population which are going to be massively affected by this.
Well, yeah.
No, not finally, actually. Let's go to the Daily Mail, Cressida.
Senior Tory MP arrested over rape and drugs.
Right, it's hard to tell which one, isn't it?
Not really, because he's come forward and said it.
There,
Okay.
he's on his... Crispin Blunt has been arrested. I don't know how much we can say about this.
He's a good friend of Owen Jones, right?
Ongoing. I'll just read you...
Sorry, he just blocked me today and that was...
Is that just completely random, or is there some connection in your...
Well, no, he just put out a tweet saying how he's an amazing ally and all this kind of stuff.
Oh.
But...
Crispin Blunt or Owen Jones?
Owen Jones put it about Crispin Blunt. But anyway, not that Crispin Blunt necessarily has done anything. That
is a confusing alliance.
So confused. Well, I've read Crispin Blunt's comment on this. He says it's been reported, blah, blah, what we've just said. I've now been interviewed twice in connection with this incident. The first time 3 weeks ago when I initially reported my concern over extortion.
Oh.
So he is telling us there's more to it, and he's not going to say any more until the police have done their inquiries.
Yeah, he's gone full Matrix attack on it. He's saying, look, this is completely false, and he's getting out in front of it. He has, basically. He's got out in front of it and said, this is nonsense. I'm perfectly happy to say it's me, but it's nonsense. And the problem is, obviously, we've had so many false accusations. I know that lots of, actual rapes are not convicted, but there's also the problem we've had so many false accusations. You do see these things, and you sort of go, I don't know anymore, because it's been devalued. And then we have the strange thing that in Kevin Spacey's case, you can just accuse someone and destroy their career anyway. So at the same time, the accusations have devalued because we have too many false ones. But then again, they hold this strange value that we don't even have due process anymore, in effect, because you cancel people just on the accusation.
Yeah, no, fantastic point and cannot be topped. Finally, let's go to the Daily Star, Nick.
Yeah, this is important. Grumpy devils and hell to live with. Now, this is about people being demonically possessed. You're not just English, you're demonically possessed. It's about, you think you're grumpy and miserable. No, you're demonically possessed. And my friend, the Reverend Dr. Jamie Franklin, who's a vicar, has he's actually just read a whole book on this and told me it is real. So I believe him blindly. Demonic possession is real. What worried me a little bit was that one of the symptoms is anxiety. I'm like, am I demonically possessed? That did occur to me. Depression, anxiety, drug or alcohol addiction, Josh, anything like that, it says. So, you think you might just be, basically, you might need an exorcist rather than some very strong painkillers.
That's it. If your partner's just being just a bit of a nightmare, it's just like, I'm going to call the church.
It's a good way to think about. I would have thought this was the Christian thing to do, assume the other person's got something going on and maybe you don't know.
Well, or is this just absolving responsibility?
From the demons.
Yeah.
Because they're at fault here.
It's up to you to get the demon out, maybe.
Let's go to the break on that one. Right, that's the front pages, all expertly assessed. Join us in a few moments for post-awards MP plagiarism and why it's finally safe to go online. See you there.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Josh Howie. Cresta doesn't have a podcast and Nix has hit 1 million downloads. Cresta, let's kick off with Friday's Mail, and it's not just posters, but the social fabric that's been ripped apart.
Met Police say no offences have been committed after viewing footage showing Palestine supporters tearing down posters of Israeli women and children kidnapped by Hamas. So this has been happening quite a lot, hasn't it, in London? We've seen a lot on social media. People are now getting their phones out and filming pro-Palestine people taking down the posters that Jewish people or Jewish supporters have put up, usually with a photograph, and they all follow this format of a red strip at the top and the bottom. And so you know these posters, and people are just taking them down.
And their posters are, of kidnapped children.
Yeah, and each one has a specific, maybe a person or a few people from a family, and it's to remind everybody these people need to be brought home. So it seems, that the point is they're civilians, they're innocent civilians, and they keep being taken down. And you would think that, given that we live in a world where Isabel Vaughan-Spruce, the woman who's pro-life, recently was arrested for praying in her head, you'd think it would be reasonable to assume that this was kind of more serious than that. And yet the Met have said no offence has been committed.
Yeah, well, but that, Nick, I believe, is on this one specific one in Leicester Square. Actually, a friend of mine, Rich Ferrer, he's the one who actually filmed them and confronted them. Although what I don't believe they've noticed, and someone has who's translated it from Urdu, is one of the men says, "No one will be spared," which sounds somewhat ominous. And the other interesting thing is, and I'm sure you both noticed from watching this, in this particular clip, they seem very well-to-do, modern dress. They're not sort of Islamic fundamentalists seemingly on front. They seem like some young people out in central London, Nick.
Yeah, they're just sort of pro-Palestine, sort of young people, as you say. Yeah, and as Cressida says, we've just seen Isabel Vaughan-Spruce again questioned by police. Are you praying for the lives of the unborn? They asked her, because she stood in the wrong part praying. And we saw the woman woman in her 70s was visited by the police for taking a photo of a gender-critical sticker. So in light of things like that, we're bound to ask about the two-tier justice system, which has become such a cliche to even talk about. But the question is, what are we going to do? If it's not a crime, it comes down to what Kemi Badenoch is talking about here, and she talks about the unwritten rule and the social contract of our country. But this is the problem. When you treat countries as just economies and you just say, let's say we can just have anyone in this country, they don't need to integrate into our values, then of course this is going to happen, because things like unwritten rules and social contracts evolve organically over hundreds of years. So of course we're going to have these kind of problems, and this is the famous failure of multiculturalism that Suella Braverman's spoken about.
I mean, there's the most shocking one that I've seen is one of these posters of these two toddlers, and they've had Hitler moustaches drawn on them. Now, I believe the Met Police are dealing with that one as a hate crime, and there's also talk of people who are here on visas, like tourist visas or student visas or whatever, if they're carrying out this kind of behaviour or showing themselves to be pro-Hamas, should be kicked out. I mean, would you agree with this, Cresta?
Yeah, totally. But it sounds like...
Yes!
I love that you had to ask as well. Brilliant.
Just checking.
I don't know. I wonder whether it's such a scary prospect for the police to try and contain this sort of thing.
Sure.
Because Isabel Vaughan-Spruce is one person, but this... And also sometimes I wonder whether the people taking down the posters, whether... I wonder how much... I don't mean to be patronising, but I wonder how much they know and whether it was... when they're very young people...
That's a great question. To both of you, I'd just like to... Why do you think they're doing this? I mean, you can still be a human being and still have sympathy for people for innocent people.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the crazy thing here. There's an argument that it could be because they don't want to be faced with these innocent people, you know, who are part of what they support, have carried out, Nick.
Yeah, I've seen some people who probably have, let's say, who are immigrants doing it, but I've also seen some people who are just clearly kind of middle-class students doing it. And in their case, they're just brainwashed by the education system. So they're either radically anti-Israel or they're brainwashed into being so. It amounts to the same thing. Yeah. So that's why they're doing it. So they've lost their humanity, as we've seen in so many of these examples, and they just see it as, you know, fair game.
I mean, that's the incredible thing, that they think that they're good people, except they're massively morally compromised.
There was one great person in the video, which was the old woman who said, "Shut up, you effing W." And she was like the absolute hero of the video.
Fag in hand.
Yeah. That's what this country was built on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Moving on to The Independent. And Nick, one of those seemingly boring stories that actually has a massive impact on us all.
Oh, yeah, it's massive. It's the Online Safety Act becomes law in the UK. Now, you'll have heard of the Online Safety Bill. We've all been talking about it loads. And Ofcom are going to regulate it, so, you know, say no more. And The Independent here is sort of hinting that it's a good thing, which is how we know it's bad. And they're saying it's keeping children safe online. Now, who could object to keeping children safe? But, of course, what the Online Safety Bill will do is turn us all into children, because we won't be able to see things that we need. Thanks, I thought of that just before I came on. That's kind of my job. So the point is, we won't be able to see things like terrorism on X, formerly Twitter, which has been such a key part of this recent conflict. We've been able to see the reality of Hamas, for example. That will be illegal. And then things like revenge pornography. OK, you can get on board with that, but terrorism you'll lose as well. So this problem is you lose important things we need to see. And why is it up to Ofcom? Why is it up to the government? And so I don't trust this bill at all. I think it will be a big net negative.
Well, as Nick says, it's been a long time coming, Cressida. A lot of criticism along the way in terms of the impact on free speech. Have they actually done anything to deal with any of these issues?
Who, Ofcom?
No, the government as they were putting it through.
Oh, I don't know. But what I do know is that WhatsApp, if WhatsApp are threatening to leave the UK over this, well done, WhatsApp. The great thing about that is everybody loves WhatsApp, and that will... I feel like a lot of people may not be thinking about this. And when WhatsApp say we're off,
we need WhatsApp.
People are going to notice, aren't they?
Yeah.
How else am I going to receive dog pictures? Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen those videos where it's from people in Canada and it suddenly says this is not available in your country. And this is what we're going to have with the Online Safety Bill. In America, they'll probably have a higher level of freedom depending on how much damage Biden does. And we'll be like trying to speak to people in America to find out what's happened because it'll say not available in your country. Yeah. I think it's going to be awful.
You need like VPNs or whatever. I mean, look, there are certain parts of the bill protecting children, age limits, that you can definitely get behind. But yes, the argument is that, of course, the criticism is that there's a massive overreach. And, of course, this is also going to make Ofcom incredibly powerful now.
Yeah, way too powerful. I'm not happy. Every time I see these climate activists getting really hysterical and crying...
I would just like to say balance that Ofcom will be not powerful.
We love Ofcom and welcome our new Ofcom overlords.
Exactly. Friday's Guardian next. Cressida, who stole from Wikipedia and The Guardian for their book, and how is it in any way readable?
Labour's Rachel...
That was a joke about The Guardian and Wikipedia not being readable. Sorry.
Very good.
Thank you. Oh, no, it's just you didn't acknowledge it, but that's right.
I was laughing inside.
I was still thinking about Ofcom and whether I said the right thing. We love Ofcom. Carry on.
You weren't thinking about your podcast. Labour's Rachel Reeves denies apparent plagiarism over her new book. Oh, Rachel, this is so embarrassing.
Naughty, naughty Rachel.
In this day and age of AI, you would have thought that she would understand that if you just put chunks of stuff in from elsewhere, it's not going to be long before it's noticed, and it hasn't been long. So she's written this book, The Women Who Made Modern Economics, and in this book, an examination by the FT found more than 20 examples of passages from other sources that appear to have been lifted wholesale or reworked with minor changes without acknowledgement. And her publisher, who are called Basic Books, which is just great, isn't it? Why not? They're kind of saying, yeah, but nobody does all the references.
Well, this is it. I mean, Nick, do you really want a future Chancellor who doesn't have that attention to detail?
Yeah, one would think the job requires an eye for detail, and the FT has pointed out that, themes of the book were failure to properly acknowledge the work of female economists, as Edgy just ripped off a load of people. So that's pants. And as you say, they're called Basic Books, and Rachel's been a bit of a basic book writer. So she needs to sack her ghostwriter. There's some funny examples. She just took a sentence verbatim about Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and how they'd, brought poor people to the heart of Whitehall. She just adds in Anne Claire Short, basically, in just slightly different words. Just adding women, just sprinkling women throughout the book with, cut and paste.
And look, to be fair, writing a book's tough.
It's long. Yeah, it's boring.
It's total pain. Compromise next in The Telegraph. Will this appease anyone or everyone, Nick?
Yes, this is a very serious story. This is not all criminals will be forced to attend sentencing to avoid propaganda in court. So it's going to be up to the judge's discretion whether or not convicted criminals come to court for sentencing. And so that's the concern before was that it was automatic. And now they're going to depend on the case. They're worried that people will be able to exploit it and say, well, I've not been to court.
It's never been automatic. The problem is they were thinking about making it automatic.
Yeah, sorry, correct. Yeah. And this is going to make it at the judge's discretion, which seems sensible to me. Not an expert, as we've just established, but it seems pretty sensible to leave it up to the judge, depending on the case.
I am so surprised at you.
Why?
I thought you would say that was a soft lib nonsense. I'm
Maybe it is. It's in the Telegraph. I assumed it was fine.
You know, you ever watch? Yeah, why would you? But these kind of like true crime that you can. There are court scenes that you can see in America. They put a muzzle on people that they really think are going to cause trouble. And we're hearing about muzzles a lot with dogs at the moment. Same thing, and it's possible. And they're kind of implying in here it's not possible.
Some of the people certainly mentioned killers of children and whatnot. That I have no problem with them being in a muzzle and whatnot. Also, how does the judge decide who's... what do they mean by propaganda, that someone's going to use it for propaganda?
This is time for a Cress's dadism. He says, what gets measured gets done. And what will happen is there'll be a trend for if you misbehave in this way, you don't have to go into court, and then they'll all start doing it.
Yeah, and also, what's the incentive here? Someone's got, like, multiple life sentences. They're saying here that if they don't go to court to be in the sentencing, they're going to get an extra 2 years. Well, what difference is that going to make for someone in that position?
Yeah, so maybe I misunderstood. I thought the judge can still, if they think that they're going to brag about not turning up, they can still force them to turn up.
They can force them to turn up. Well, they can say you're going to get an extra 2 years, but what difference is that going to make to someone who is
and the point is,
serving multiple life sentences?
The judge assesses the criminal based on how they've behaved thus far in the trial. And if they think, oh, you're going to make it worse for the victim's family, maybe you're...
That's what I thought. But using the fact you said it was soft liberal stuff made me worried, and I'm checking now.
No.
I'll get back to you later with
that's interesting. Both
what the most conservative take is.
They're sort of out conservating.
Yeah,
is that a word?
I think I misunderstood it.
Right, finally in this section, it's Friday's Express. And new Rishi Sushi, is going to help us all get to sleep better, Cressida.
Sunak to reassure public over AI as experts warn of existential threat. This is...
It's more AI.
Yeah, I don't know
We love a bit of an AI story here.
It's looking pretty bleak. A new paper published by the Government Office for Science to accompany the speech that he's going to give says there is insufficient evidence to rule out a threat to humanity from AI. And he acknowledges this, basically. They're saying, given the significant uncertainty, there's insufficient evidence to rule out that highly capable future frontier AI systems... They could pose an existential threat.
Don't talk that crazy, sexy talk to me.
How reassured do you feel?
Well, I don't, because they're claiming that, look, it's quite low risk that the technology would outpace mitigations, gain control over critical systems and be able to avoid being switched off. So their tactic is that they're going to unplug it, and they think it can't withstand the unplugging. I'm sceptical. They're basically saying Ofcom will stop the Terminator, and I just don't believe the government has that ability.
We love Ofcom. We're at the halfway point. It's fun and frolic straight down the slope till bedtime. Coming up, we have the Culture War section with bad Black history, British Black history, bad female students, and where do people who are gay work? See you in 2.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows...
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners and straight into Friday's Independent. Nick, why do none of these people pick Lenny Henry?
I was thinking about making a similar joke, but I thought it's too tasteless, and you've already made it.
2 out of order.
So it's half of Britons can't name a single black British historical figure, research shows. And it, like you say, it is crazy. I mean, there's Anne Boleyn. Did anyone get that reference?
No, I don't. Oh,
Anne Boleyn was played, but yeah, never mind.
Yeah, very good.
Viewers at home will be digging that. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, 75% of British adults surveyed said they didn't know very much or anything about the subject matter at all, and 53% could not name any black British historical figures, and we're all supposed to hate ourselves and feel terrible, but
it's also Blackbeard.
Blackbeard, yeah. Good point, Josh. Rather you than me. Look, there's loads of people. There's Alada Equiano, who I'm sure you've read his book. I have. There's Mary Seacole. You could name lots of people, but Diane Abbott. There's loads of people, but the point is, why do we have to feel so guilty? There just weren't that many black people in the country, so by its nature, there's not going to be that many historical figures. But these kind of articles in The Independent, we're all supposed to feel terrible, and people underestimated the amount of people involved in slavery, in the British slave trade, but we also ended slavery. That gets no mention. I just think it's another sort of
I think there's
hand-wringing article.
This does raise a few points. First of all, it's interesting how in this article they don't actually name any black historical figures. Secondly, I think people are just rubbish at history in general. I reckon if you just ask most people in the street for any historical figures, they'd be like Shakespeare.
Yeah. Who is Winston Churchill?
Cromwell, whatever. If you ask them for someone from the 15th century, 14th century, whatever, I think people would struggle with that. And I think the main factor is that they're asking sort of adults, I assume, children. Did you wink at me, by the way?
No.
It was my
contact lens.
Looked like you winked at me for a second.
No, I'm not.
But the main question: if you ask our kids who are doing a lot of, it genuinely looked like you winked at me about. Like,
don't out me, Josh, like this.
Go for it, Josh.
You pretended I was engaged to Cressida before. I was sticking with that.
I'm not pretending. I was just revealing to the public what you don't want. Anyway, the point is, our children certainly are learning. I know because every year during Black History Month, they come back, we're doing the homework. So I wonder if it's, asking adults, they may not know this stuff, but I think our children are, and that's surely the whole point of educating our kids about this stuff.
I guess so. I don't think the tone of this is going to encourage any learning either, is it? It's all stick and no carrot.
Yes, heading to the Telegraph now, and white people just keep getting stupider and stupider, Cressida.
White students, a minority of applicants at Oxbridge for the first time. So that's progress, isn't it? I guess. I don't know. Is it? I think it might be, because it might show that all the outreach programmes are making headway. I don't know. So it showed for the first time, this data, that aspiring white students have made up less than half of UK applicants. And it's all, the other interesting thing, so it's not just about colour, although the headline is about colour, it's also, the figures are showing that a record number of teenagers from the most deprived areas in the UK have applied. Although I suppose there could be some crossover there, I don't know.
Well, yeah, Nick, I mean, always it seems to be ethnicity is brought in as this major factor, but I think we've learned from various reports in the past that actually it's economics that seems to play a massive way. In this case, you have 9.2% of coming from rich areas as opposed to 2.2% from the lowest economic areas, right?
Yeah, but poor white boys are still, and which of course is race and economics, but they are still the least likely group to go to university of any demographic, and no one cares, except perhaps this article. But yeah, it also points out teenagers from wealthier neighbourhoods still far more likely to go, which is annoying, because I was, as we know, I got the third highest grade in the country on my history A-level syllabus. I rarely mention it, but I only mention it to illustrate no one said to me go to Oxbridge, so there is still that posh thing.
You should talk about it in your million downloaded podcast.
You're a force of nature, Nick, aren't you? You're unique. What do you think about contextual admissions systems? This is interesting, because it sounds like they might be saying they're not just going on merit.
Yes, well, that's the thing. Look, it's brilliant. Like, apply... The applications is one process, is one thing, but when it comes to actually who's getting in, are the best qualified children the ones who are actually going to the universities? And what impact, of course, that has for the future, because we're not just talking Oxbridge here. Oxbridge, it's also, I think it's medical degrees, dentistry, veterinarian stuff. And this is a very recent, it's a huge shift. It's gone, white students have gone down from 67.9% only 8 years ago to now 49%. That's a large drop, arguably. And the other thing they don't mention, I think, is well, they mentioned just at the end, China, and the role of foreign students within that as well. It's not just that you read these headlines and you start thinking, oh, it's black and white. It's not. It's actually, the reality is the impact of foreign students coming over this country, Krista, right?
Yeah, plenty of money.
Again, a classic Howie non-question.
You almost don't need us.
The answer is yes, Josh.
Almost. I like the winking, that's all. Let's check out the Times next. And Nick, female students just keep on getting stupider and stupider.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. Hard to top. Female students are far less likely.
Anybody who complains about that link should know that it's in the context of the previous link, which was out of order as well.
Which was you also being misogynist, yeah. Always the ones that claim to be feminists. So female students far less likely to get top degrees. And basically, women are not going into STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, despite government efforts to tackle the imbalance. And what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that people are different and we should stop forcing everyone to be the same. And this is what we have. We have this leftist blank slatism. Everyone must be the same. Everyone must do exactly the same things. It's also, why do women have to do the same as men? I had Will Noland on my podcast, a different podcast of mine, and he was, because he was sacked from Eton for a lecture on masculinity, he actually said feminism is misogynist, which I thought was really interesting. His point is, why do women just have to do the things that men do? So they're obsessed with getting women into STEM, but what if they just don't want to go into STEM? This person, Dorothy Byrne, president of Murray Edwards, calls it shocking. But why is it so shocking? And they have a quota at Cambridge requiring 20%.
That's when it started.
Yeah, when it started. And she says we need systemic change in education. Do we? Well, maybe to help the poor white boys.
As she says, UK education failing girls, bright girls. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. I think there have been no opportunities denied to me whatsoever, and I think...
I said bright girls.
If I was a bright girl, I'd come back to that, but I won't. Look, I'm going to say what I always say. Men and women are different. I'm kind of agreeing with most of what you said.
That's because he's just been winking. The man knows. You'd be seduced by those winks.
She just knows to defer to male expertise.
It's all the Jung stuff, isn't it? Men have got different...
Jungian archetypes.
It is about Jungian... Look, I've got so many thoughts, I can't get them out quickly. But it doesn't surprise me at all. And the idea that we have to be equal is just so... It bludgeons people's... And why can't we just remember that what's true of a population in general is not necessarily true of an individual? If we knew that, we could not panic about this stuff so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, over to Telegraph, Cressida. And why should homophobic people become roofers?
Librarians, cafe workers, among jobs with most LGB employees, roofers and lollipop people the least. No T in that. Don't know why.
I noticed that as well. This is the Telegraph. I wonder if they've got a new style guide. This is the first time I've seen LGB plus for a while.
It's very sort of 2004, isn't it?
It could just be our producers doing a cut and paste error, but
no, I think this is a sign of things to come.
We have excellent producers on this show.
Which you are one, of course.
Well, that was my point.
Sorry.
Although not today. Not today.
Yeah, definite drop in quality today.
To know that, do we? My first question, they're charting which professions have the most gay people in. I don't know why we need to know that.
Well, it's all based on the census, right?
Sorry. Well, there's no gay roofers, so obviously we need an outreach programme. But then it gets more interesting because it says that there's a lot of gay people working in libraries, and they're making this suggestion that a lot of the drag queen story hour controversy is because there's lots of gay people in libraries. And I'm talking about that on Sunday at the Battle of Ideas Festival, which I think there are still tickets for.
And I'm there on Sunday as well, Battle of Ideas.
There's also, well, maybe you can also tell us, Nick, why there are so many theme park attendants who are gay.
That is weird, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe they're into Disney. They just say stereotypes.
That is the most homophobic thing I've ever heard.
Are true, basically. This is what we live in. Look, flight attendants, I mean, you know, it writes itself. I mean, I don't quite understand, though, why lollipop ladies are so aggressively straight, but it's 92.3%.
Well, they're referred to as school, midday and crossing patrol occupants.
Yes, to give them their correct title.
So, yeah, well, they can't call them lollipop they-thems, are they?
Well, no, because they're all straight. 92.3%. Yeah. But, yeah, the roofers isn't surprising anyone, is it? Because the stereotypes are there for a reason. They make sense. Come on, no one thought roofers were gay. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It's true.
When there's no female bricklayers or there's no gay roofers, the things that people want.
No, it doesn't matter at all.
But are becoming a doctor and all these things. Like, well, which way? Do you want it both ways or not? Shut up. You know what I meant.
Let's clip that one up. Right, sticking with the Telegraph, Nick, and surely this is a victory for capitalism.
Yeah, this is Unilever to tone down social purpose after virtue signalling backlash. So the Dove and Hellmann's maker says it will no longer force-fit brands with a cause because of Heinz Schumacher, who's come in. He's a tough...
It sounds like one of their products, doesn't it?
Yeah, he sounds like a tough... I mean, I'm assuming he's German. He's come in and he just sorted it all out. He said enough of this virtue signalling nonsense. Though, weirdly, he's allowing Ben & Jerry's to carry on doing their thing because they have a clear purpose, which is awful and nonsense. And he's allowing Dove to carry on doing it. But it is interesting on the whole because does it suggest a slight backlash against woke corporatism, you know, woke capital as it's sometimes called? And a few companies are doing this. Coca-Cola quietly removed any mention of Black Lives Matter from their website recently, following the kind of awful things Black Lives Matter said in the post-Hamas attack. So, you know, are they going to start putting the woke away, as some people have called it? Hopefully, let's see.
This is it. This seems like a very overt sign of companies rediscovering their purpose, which is to make profits, Cressida.
Exactly. So backlash sounds a bit heavy to me because I just think, oh, it's just we haven't sold enough soap, you know. Victoria's Secret is another one. We did a story on that recently. They're going back to being sexy again rather than unattractive women trying to sell underwear.
I'm rebuying all their stuff. One more section to go, and it's a doozy. We have glory holes, dating advice, and menopausal chimps. We've got it all. See you there.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, and let's kick off with Friday's Independent. And there's some new hot band out there, Cressida.
The last Beatles song, how AI brought the Fab Four back together one final time. Will it be the final time?
Yeah, the final
Heard
time.
what AI is all about.
Yeah.
So apparently there's this old Beatles song that never got released. There is a recording of it, but it's not very good because it's old. They tried to...
It's on a cassette, isn't it?
Right.
That's what I believe.
Something, yes. It's not digital. And they've tried to clean it up, but they can't. But AI has stepped in. I think this is like a press release for... As if the Beatles need a press release for a new song.
Well,
so they're going to re-release it, and apparently it's very moving because it sounds just... Well, it is the voice of John Lennon.
Yeah, so the 4 of them for the last time. And we've also seen other AI artists coming. We had Eminem. There was some songs that have been put out like as Eminem. I mean, he's not been involved in any way. But if you go on different sort of streaming services, they've become big hits in their own right, haven't they, Nick?
That's the kind of upsetting thing almost, the fact that AI can make it seem like the Beatles are back together anyway.
Yeah.
So they've gone to all this trouble to get John's actual voice when an AI could probably just make you think it is. Anyway, of course I like the Beatles. The Beach Boys, however, are still the best band of all time. Unpopular opinion.
No, I think that... Can't you just like both?
No.
No.
Palestine and Israel?
This man loves a hierarchy.
Yeah.
He's got to have his list.
Hierarchies.
Fair enough. OK. Right, let's take a look at this story in the Mail, Nick, if we have to.
Yes, this is students vote on whether to allow glory holes for anonymous sex in public toilets at German university. I don't pick
See, this is what happens when Cressida doesn't produce.
I know. I pick the stories on my podcast, guys, 1 million downloads, but not this. I just want to say. But anyway, it is an interesting story, though, because it's the University of Augsburg, and what was incredible is that 3 glory holes are to be built in the lecture hall centre. It's not just that some people have put them in there sort of DIY style. They're proposing to actually build them in architecturally. But what it seemed to be was a joke that was accepted as serious because it was Germany and you couldn't tell. That's basically what's happened.
I think it's the whole world.
Really? Well, yeah, when they said this one bit about there should be dimmable lights and knee padding, I went, OK, that was a joke.
Well, that's some serious... That's for health and safety, surely. I mean, this is joke or woke, what was I thought. I thought that could be the new...
Woke or joke. Didn't Dolan have that a while ago? It sounds like one of his sections.
It's typical of this modern thing, isn't it? Of, on the one hand, sex is so dangerous that we have very sensitive ideas around it, but at the same time, anything goes. But anyway, it turns out it was a joke, so that's good.
Why? Or was it?
Or was it? Yeah, because they might actually make it.
Yeah, I think we need a field trip. Time's next. Cressida is just going to tell us how to do it, please.
Men need dating advice? Here's a foolproof guide.
Here we go.
I don't know who's written this, but I think it's some ladies, and they're giving a list of things. They're giving advice to men. And it starts off, apparently there's some research that has said that it's actually not, this is from the University of Queensland, so you'd think it was legit, that they've said that it's actually not important for men to make women laugh. Well, women don't agree with that. Everyone knows it's important to make a woman laugh. So that's the beginning of the article. And then it just goes on. It's a sort of list of points that men have to sort of dance over like
For this particular one writer.
Oh,
right?
my goodness. I'm sorry to say, she doesn't sound like a very nice person.
No.
Men have to do things like they have to like her regardless of... Here's something I think you have to make her feel that you fancy her, even if she economises on body hair maintenance and grooming in general, if she throws up in the footwell of a car after a late night,
Did my wife write this?
It's asking quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
You need a neat bum, supposedly. You've got to trim your bum. There's lots of... And also something very serious about hair preservers, which was very...
Oh, yeah, they don't like men that don't want to get their hair wet.
Or whatever,
It sounds like a lot of arse. Did it make you angry, Nick?
It did, but it actually comes from Shane Watson, which I assume is a man, but he asked women.
Yeah.
But the problem is, women lie. Women lie, OK? You know, they say, like, oh, we want men to make us laugh, and they don't really. But then again, now then they say they don't, but that could also be a lie. I mean, you can't really go to women for what women actually want. You can observe them, but you can't actually ask them directly.
So what, Nick, what do you think women want?
Well, I have no idea. You can't...
Can I ask you a question? Do they want a man who's got 1 million downloaded podcasts?
You'd think.
Strangely,
I
that's
saw
not
a
on
man.
their list.
This is the best thing. Right? I saw a man on a dating app once, and they have these prompts, and it says, "After work, you can find me." ... And the guy had written, "After work, you can find me laying face down in the gutter, but don't worry, ladies, I don't work often."
Wow.
I thought that was really funny.
A bit of a Brent Michael Scott.
When are you guys getting married? You didn't click. You didn't go left or right on it.
Oh, the man in the app. Oh no, he didn't swipe back.
Got it.
Onto The Guardian, and Nick, did Just Stop Oil get to the poppy people?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is Royal British Legion gives poppy plastic-free makeover. And so, obviously, the poppy is a nice gesture. It's very important to remember our fallen soldiers. And the only problem is they're making it plastic-free, so it's hard for me to engage in remembrance now while also sticking it to, you know, big climate change or whatever it is. So I want a plastic...
Everything with you always has to be two-tiered.
Well, I want...
3D chess there.
Well, because they're making poppies woke now, and it's a conflict for me. I want to wear my poppy and also just waste plastic. So it's a bit... these are going to be plastic-free. So...
OK.
It's a bit silly, isn't it? It's such a small...
I suppose it's 3 years in the making. They've been designing this and whatnot.
How much plastic did that involve? I mean, how much later...
M&S went, this big campaign, we're not going to have plastic knives and forks anymore. And then you go at M&S and there's just rows and rows of plastic.
For a second,
I
thought you said M&M for a second, because he just said M&M, like M&M's campaign against plastic knives and forks. Sorry.
Yeah, but we are moving into poppy season, of course. Best thing, of course, is to buy a metal one, which is more expensive, but then you can use it. But then they put the year on it, so then it makes you look cheap if you're wearing, like, last year's.
Yeah, I saw your one from 97.
No, sorry, Chris, what were you going to say?
We could have one, couldn't we, that's ours, like Christmas decorations that you keep, and then we could just donate every year.
I like it. Very nice. And The Guardian again, where it's not just cheetah who lived a long time, Cressida.
Wild female chimps live long post-menopause life, study suggests. So some scientists have
Those bloody scientists.
not boffins, but scientists, so I guess they know what they're doing. They've been studying some chimpanzees, and so it turns out chimpanzees have the menopause around the age of 50, which is the same as human beings.
Yeah.
And then they live past 50, which is the same as human beings.
Yeah.
And obviously you think, why would you have a woman living past 50? It's
crazy.
I didn't want to say.
Makes no sense.
It'll never catch on. But apparently the chimps are into it too. And some of these chimps have then lived 20% more life after the menopause. And the scientists are saying, why would that happen?
What's their purpose?
What's the
what are they good for?
Does it answer?
Well, it gives some suggestions. I mean, one of the things is they're in captivity, so maybe
Idea there.
They're saying it's the grandma theory, so they can hang out, and they're also saying that they can keep on being sexually active, which takes the pressure off the younger women. Anyway, that's back to my life. Right, let's quickly go to the Friday's front pages. We are going to go with, straight of all, the Daily Mail. Senior Tory MP arrested over rape and drugs. Telegraph, Putin welcomes Hamas to Moscow. Guardian, Israel stages raid into Gaza as new phase of war begins. The Times, 200 Britons trapped in Gaza plead for help. Express, dementia cases to rise, but new drug offers hope. And finally, the Daily Star, grumpy devils and hell to live with. And those were your front pages. That is all we have time for. Thank you very much, my guests, Cresta Wetton and Nick Million Downloaded Dixon. We're back tomorrow at 11 p.m, where Nick and Cresta are back again with superstar Lewis Schaefer. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Thank you for joining us.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Thursday night, and this is Farage at Large, live from St Austell. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Good evening. I'm here in St Austell. Again, a very enthusiastic crowd. We'll be talking Middle East, we'll be talking banking, and we'll be talking many things Cornish. And joining me on Talking Pints tonight, Cornish rugby legend Phil Vickery. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has been arrested on suspicion of rape and the possession of controlled substances. The MP for Reigate identified himself on social media this afternoon as the man Surrey Police did detain in Hawley yesterday morning. Well, Surrey Police has confirmed the man was released on conditional police bail pending their further inquiries. Mr Blunt has already been removed from the Tory party and asked to stay away from Parliament. The former minister said he'll cooperate fully with the ongoing police investigation and is confident he won't be charged. Meanwhile, also in the news tonight, the UK's border force is currently in Egypt, with the Prime Minister confirming officers are ready to help British nationals escape Gaza when the border reopens. And Cabinet ministers held an emergency Cobra meeting this morning to address the escalating crisis in the Middle East. The government's pushing for a pause in the fighting, rejecting calls for a full ceasefire to facilitate aid reaching Palestinians. And in Gaza itself, the Health Ministry says the death toll has now passed 7,000, and they say that includes almost 3,000 children. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister has waded into the conflict, claiming Hamas is ready to release hostages and the world should support the release of 6,000 Palestinian prisoners. And that comes as the Arab nations released a joint statement today condemning what they're describing as the forced displacement and collective punishment of Palestinians. Israel maintains it's only targeting the terrorist group Hamas. Now, in other news today, in the United States, a manhunt is continuing after 18 people were killed by a gunman and 13 more left injured. Police in the state of Maine have named 40-year-old Robert Card as a person of interest, describing him as armed and dangerous. The US Army has confirmed that he's in the US Army Reserves. The shootings happened in at least 2 locations in the city of Lewiston. The US President Joe Biden has responded, urging Republican lawmakers to enact stronger gun controls. Today, the Prime Minister warned that artificial intelligence could threaten human extinction on the same scale as global pandemics or nuclear war. His comments came after touring Moorfields Eye Hospital in London, which uses AI to diagnose sight problems. Rishi Sunak says humanity could lose control of AI, and criminals and terrorist groups could use it to spread fear and destruction. He's also announced, though, the formation of the world's first AI Safety Institute in the UK to explore the risks and share its data with the world. Now, remembrance poppies will be plastic-free this year and recyclable in the first redesign of the iconic emblem in a generation. It's all part of a move by the Royal British Legion to reduce its production of single-use plastics. From today, volunteers and supermarkets will be selling the historic symbol, worn annually to honour the service and sacrifice of Britain's armed forces in conflicts over decades. Each poppy sold raises money to support surviving veterans as well as serving personnel. And you may notice I'm wearing an old-fashioned poppy today. That's because we're using up last year's box. We're waiting for our delivery of those brand new poppies. You're watching GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel, crossing live now to St Austell in Cornwall.
Good evening. I'm joining you live from Cornwall this evening. We're going to be discussing international issues, Cornish issues and national issues. And one issue that affects absolutely everybody is whether they have a bank account or not, because without one, you become a non-person. You simply can't function. I've been campaigning on this, as you may well know, since the middle of this summer. I like to think with some effect. The National Westminster Bank Board met today, and we know their figures will be released, their quarterly figures will be released at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. We haven't had a statement at all out of the NatWest Board. You know the NatWest Board. That's the NatWest Board that insisted that Dame Alison Rose should stay in position despite leaking the details of my banking situation to the BBC's business correspondent. Now, that same NatWest Board must have found themselves in a bit of a pickle today, because the ICO report that was released last night from the Information Commissioner's office said that, yes, Alison Rose had very clearly broken the law. So we've heard nothing at all. We're also waiting for the Travers Smith report. This is the so-called independent report that'll be put into the whole saga. And it's coming from a firm whose emeritus chair, Chris Hale, has described Brexiteers as racists and xenophobes. So we can look forward to a jolly independent report, can't we? I've seen the report, I've read the report, I'm not really allowed to say what's in it, but I don't think it's going to actually bear much fruit. You see, what really matters in a situation like this is not just the ICO, who did say they wouldn't take action until the report had been released, so I'm going to keep the pressure on them, but also the Financial Conduct Authority. These are the people, you know, running financial services in this country, which affects every single individual, rich and poor. And they seem to be more concerned over the last few years with pushing issues such as diversity and inclusion, and of course climate change, more than actually worrying about whether people have got proper financial services, including banking. So we'll find out more at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. You may be thinking that maybe Nigel's getting a bit obsessive about this. Well, you know what? There's a million people have had their bank accounts removed over the course of the last few years, and many, many of them small businesses that have struggled horribly since. By the end of this year, they will have closed 3 out of 5 high street branches around the country. Many of them almost don't want to take cash that comes from local businesses. This fight is not just for me. This fight is about a fairer, freer society. And do you know something? I'm going to keep on fighting because I will not let them get away with it. OK, now, the situation in the Middle East becomes graver by the day. Let's go straight to Tel Aviv to join GB News' security editor, Mark White. Mark, good evening. So last night, as I understand it, the first serious Israeli incursions into Gaza. What scale was that actually on?
Well, pretty significant. The largest incursion into northern Gaza since the war began, with dozens of tanks, bulldozers used to break through that border fence to allow those tanks and soldiers into Gaza. This was an operation that was aimed at taking out Hamas defensive positions. So when that eventual ground war takes place, then hopefully there will not be as many traps waiting for the Israeli Defense Forces.